Hi, everyone. I'm Taylor Combeluzier, a mining analyst at Red Cloud. This session of our fall mining showcase will feature Grid Metals. From the company, we have with us Robin Dunbar, President and Director, as well as Dave Peck, who's the Vice President of Exploration and Business Development. I'll note that if any attendees have questions, just type them in the chat and we'll get to them at the end of the session. The presentation is also available on the conference website. And with that, I'll turn it over to Robin and Dave to guide us through the story.
Well, good day, everyone. I'll be speaking today, as I was introduced, VPX and also in business development for Grid. We're focused on Palladium and have been for most of the year, but we're also strategically dusting off and bringing back into the light for the investors our nickel assets, quite significant. So we'll be talking about both those things today. And the company, its asset base, I would say highly undervalued, both for palladium and nickel, is discussed here. East Bull Lake is our flagship palladium project, located 80 kilometers west of Sudbury. And the Bannockburn nickel is one of two nickel assets we have, the other one being Makwa-Mayville. Makwa-Mayville is a PEA stage project. It's got a resource on the books of about 40 million tons lower grade nickel copper with some PGEs. And we haven't really done much with it since around 2014. And then Bannockburn is a project the company's held for approximately 20 years, acquired from Outokumpu in the Timmins district, with a lot of the same flavor that Mark Selby's been talking about for his Crawford Nickel project during this conference. So we'll get your eyes in on both those projects in the second part of this talk. Both Robin and I have had significant experience in nickel and palladium, PGE, both as explorers and also in senior management positions. Robin was with Western Areas, Australian nickel producer, for many years on their board. And he also has held the East Bull Lake project and been involved in PG exploration for over 20 years. I come into the company, I joined in January this year with coming off the sale of North American Palladium to Impala Platinum for $1 billion. And that was my point of exit from NAP, where I'd spent several years as VPX and as part of the senior management team. And then before that, I spent almost 10 years with Anglo American as a global commodity leader for nickel and their exploration division. I won't go into the palladium market. I think several talks have covered that already. Price remains strong. Fundamentals look good in the near term anyway. And we'll be all watching with interest to see how the U.S. election turns out and how the sort of forecast on EV production unfolds over the next few years. The current forecasts show a persistent palladium market deficit, even with the growth in EVs for the next few years, especially if a lot of the EV, green vehicle market is involving hybrids, which actually have higher palladium loadings than conventional gas burners. Lots of palladium projects around the world, very few good ones, and we have one of them at East Bull Lake. So I'll talk about that in a moment. Where's the project located? 80 kilometers west of Sudbury. Excellent infrastructure, fantastic skilled mining force, smelters, mills, refining connections. So it's all there. Road accessible, year-round drilling, 100% claims, all owned by 100% by Grid Metals. As I mentioned, Grid and its forerunner Mustang Minerals has had the property for over 20 years. The property is enormous. The slide on the bottom, or the image on the bottom left, is just a very simplified geology map of the host intrusion, East Bull Lake intrusion. I actually started working on this in 1990 and did a lot of the initial mapping and prospecting of the complex for PG and nickel copper. And the bubbles symbols are sized and colored by palladium grade. So you can see this intrusion is about 20 kilometers east to west. It has about 100 drill holes on our part of the property, which is about 90% of the intrusion. Canadian Palladium also presented at this conference, are exploring about a 3.5 kilometer section of the southern part of the complex, and have had good success recently this year and still drilling and trying to expand on their maiden resource, which they announced last year. We're not quite at that stage yet. We took the position early in the year to take advantage of the palladium markets and try and get some exploration dollars raised. I had some new concepts and ideas I wanted to test out coming from Lac des Îles, where I learned a lot about the role of structure and magma flow through structures and how that could develop enhanced palladium grades, PG grades, and these types of intrusions. Geology here is very similar to Lac des Îles. The difference is the project's at a much earlier stage. Lac des Îles has been mining since 1993, and we're still at the exploration stage on our property, but with a lot of smoke, and we'll talk about that on the next couple of slides. So really well mineralized over a huge area, 20 kilometers, just for reference. The entire Lac des Îles resource of around 200 million tons historic endowment is about a kilometer long. So there's lots of room here for big deposits related hopefully to feeder structures, and I've shown some of those potential feeders on this slide, the dashed black lines. So this year we've raised a couple of $1 million for East Bull Lake exploration. We haven't gone through all of that yet, but we've gone through a lot of it. We've drilled 11 holes this year, and it was really to test the ability of a geophysical method called magnetotellurics to guide us to where we're getting enhanced abundances of magmatic sulfides, just small amounts, 1% to 2%, and palladium, which goes with the sulfides. And we've drilled 11 holes. We reported on 8, including a new hole we reported on this week in a press release. And we've intersected on every hole a very well mineralized unit, a stratigraphic unit along the base of the intrusion. And using our new drilling and older drill hole information, we now believe that there's a continuous blanket of palladium mineralization that outcrops along the margins of the complex and dips into the center. And the deepest intersection that we know of, which was drilled by Atomic Energy of Canada in the 1980s, hits this blanket zone at about 800 meters depth, 700 to 800 meters depth. So that's the proof of the pudding. The method we selected is working. It's guiding us to areas where this mineralized envelope exists. And the big breakthrough we've had recently is actually linking the grade and the grade potential to other attributes that we know about on this very prospective intrusion. One of them being magnetics and the other being structure. So we're connecting the dots slowly, very systematically, between the geophysical data, the known mineralization, the rock types, the geology, and the structure. And from that, we've developed a new exploration methodology that we're going to be testing here in the next 2 to 3 weeks. We'll have some new holes completed testing specifically this new methodology. This is some of the numbers selected results from this year's drilling, and we're looking at, as I said, a pretty thick blanket of anomalous palladium within which you get some higher grade sections. So the trick now is to find out where in this big blanket, which extends, maybe 4 kilometers north-south and all the way across the entire strike length of the intrusion along the margins, where is there a slight increase in sulfide abundance? To find that, we have to do closely spaced drilling and use geophysics, borehole geophysics, to pick up the sulfide abundance around the hole. So that's what we're testing in the next program. This map is just quickly showing the connection between grade, and those are the bubble symbols again, palladium grade. You can see several areas where we've got samples over 6 grams, and the magnetics is specifically in this blue polygon. So this blue area, I believe, is the result of alteration of the lower stratigraphy, the prospective unit, that responds very well as a magnetic low in geophysical surveys, and now we're doing 3D modeling of this to figure out, directions to drill, and the known mineralization at surface or near surface. So we've got a lot of area to test. This one structure we're looking at here, the Sables River structure, which kind of runs from the bottom right corner to the top left corner of the dashed black line. That's about 7 kilometers of strike length there. Parisian Lake structure, where we're focused right now, is about 4 kilometers on our property. So these are big targets, and it's going to take a little bit of effort to get us to resource delineation, but we're not far off. And we actually hope to start the resource delineation program in January with a lot more 3D modeling to be done between now and then, and some more results coming. We haven't had a lot of exposure to the market in terms of our nickel assets, but we've made a strategic decision to do that now. And we'll talk about mainly the Bannockburn project, which is for us a really exciting opportunity. We get no value assigned to it, and probably most people aren't familiar with it, so we'll introduce it to you here. I'm not going to go into the nickel markets. You've had lots of that. Canada Nickel and Mark Selby have given a presentation here, and very encouraging, getting good traction on their resource build up and the sort of forward economic modeling they're doing on this low grade bulk mineable kind of Mount Keith type deposit in the Timmins area. We're not far away, still in the Timmins area, with a very similar project that, again, most people wouldn't be aware of. So we're going to address that lack of knowledge and information and get a new 43-101 out in the next 2 or 3 weeks, and also start to promote the property for exploration. Just quickly on that Bannockburn project, this is a magnetic map showing the extent of this mag high, the bright colors here, bright purple and pink. That's the main intrusive body, and this series of dots is the geophysical trace of what we call the B zone. And you can see some of the historical drilling here, 200 meters at 0.33, some higher grade material like they see at Crawford with Canada Nickel at 0.52. And a little bit of metallurgy has been done, and we're seeing very good potential for a very high-grade nickel con here if we can bulk up the tonnage and prove the continuity, with the predominant sulfide mineral being hazelwoodite, which has over 70% nickel. So it can make a nickel con of 35 to 40% with good recoveries. And the other good thing is the geophysics shows where that higher grade is likely to be, because the higher nickel content goes with stronger magnetic responses. And we also see the silicate nickel component drop off as the sulfide nickel component increases. So we'll be coming out with news on this, some focused investor reports on Bannockburn in the next few weeks. And we hope to get this project back to drilling in the new year. And we'll do some step-out holes along this B-zone trend. I should mention there are 3 massive sulfide zones, komatiite type nickel in the upper part of the stratigraphy, D zone, C zone, and Thalweg. And there's also another untested EM anomaly, 400 meter strike length that we haven't drilled yet. So that'll be potentially part of this project. But our real focus is on trying to put grid investors to get some upside, like tagging on with what Mark Selby's been doing. And then just finally on Makwa Mayville, we had a PEA done. There's a indicated and inferred resource, 2 open pit resources in southeast Manitoba. Mac was a former producer. Falconbridge had it in production for a few years, a long time ago. And then Mayville's company discovery resource that was put on the table by Grid Mustang several years ago. They're low grade, but they're in the range of similar projects in Canada that have produced some good market caps for junior project owners, and we don't get any reflection of that for us right now. So look, we're a palladium explorer, we're a nickel explorer. I think we're on the verge of some good news both at East Bull Lake and at Bannockburn, and we'll come back to Makwa sometime next year as well. I should mention with Makwa there is a PG zone, and we've had some fantastic results. This is dating back to 2011, 9 meters of 9 grams, 9 meters of almost 4 grams combined palladium, platinum, gold. So this is another thing that we've got in our quiver that we want to have a look at again next year. So good time to invest in the company, very undervalued, on the verge of some very good news on a couple of projects. And I'll turn it over to any questions there might be.
Perfect. Thanks a lot, Dave, for that. So I guess just to start off, you've got a few more holes to drill this year at East Bull Lake. After that, like, what do you think you would need there to get to a resource? Like, how much drilling would you like to do?
So if we're looking at, let's take an example of a 1 kilometer long mineral trend like Lactazio. Good analogy. You probably, for an inferred resource, you need about 50 meter to 100 meter spacing. And so if you're going to drill it off to inferred, we're probably talking about 5,000 to 10,000 meters. Would be looking for something near surface pitable as first prize. And so that's what we'd like to do in that sort of winter program, is get to the point of knowing where do we want to focus those resource delineation drilling dollars.
Right.
So I guess the next step, we're going to do more proof of concept work with this current program. The January, February, March winter program is really designed to tell us exactly where that resource is sitting. It could be multiple areas. There were 2 main areas we're looking at, maybe 3. And, it doesn't take very long to execute inferred resource drilling once you know where you want to be. Mm-hmm. So it's not a huge cost. The costs for us for drilling there are great because it's all road accessible. The infrastructure is in. Right.
Okay, and then you talked a little bit about your refined exploration criteria that you've been working on through developing that. In your recent press release, you also said there's some ongoing sampling to continue doing work on that, and you kind of put out the initial results, I guess. When do you expect to have the final results in from that?
So we're expecting the assays back next week. We got 3 more holes to report on from drilling we finished about 3 weeks ago, and then we've got over 100 surface samples from this Parisian lake area. A lot of outcrops that weren't sampled well before or weren't sampled at all. So we'll have all of that information bundled up for release, I hope, in 2 to 3 weeks.
Okay. So we have one question here on the chat. I'm not sure exactly which project that he's referring to, but he wants to know, what is a realistic timeline to go into production on a deposit like this?
That's a tricky one. Look, the Sudbury area and the Timmins area established mining camps, so there's already some acceptance from all the stakeholders locally. So you're not dealing with the breaking trail and trying to get in. So the timeline's as short as it can be in Canada with all the environmental regulations and permitting processes, First Nations outreach and inclusion. I would say 10 to 12 years is sort of reasonable for a pit, and underground a little bit longer, depending on this type of deposit, type of mining method. So that's kind of the window for these things.
Okay. And then I guess just on your nickel asset, Bannockburn, what does so you said you've started a process to kind of update the technical report that exists there. What does the timeline look like on that again?
So the technical report, it's being done right now. It should be done in about 2 to 3 weeks. And as soon as we're comfortable with it, and it passes all the regulatory approvals, we'll get it out to the investors right away. So maybe 4 to 5 weeks.
Right. So it sounds like you have a lot of catalysts coming up. Maybe you could just close out the session, just giving the highlights on what's coming next for Grid.
Yeah. So the first catalyst will be East Bull Lake, and so the final drill results, the final surface sampling results, and then trying to raise some more money for the January drill program. And then Bannockburn, stay tuned, again, trying to reintroduce the project. Comparisons to Canada Nickel and Mark Selby's success there.
Perfect. Thank you very much. That brings us to the end of the session. So just want to thank both Dave and Robin for being on the presentation today. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you very much.
Our pleasure. Yeah, thank you.